enjoy it and continues to like excite me and interest me and teach me things every day. So it's certainly a field that I'm quite passionate about.
Mm. So I'm going to connect to YouTube Live. Okay, give me just a second, please. I think we are going to be ready to start. Okay, we are live, my friend. Give me 1 second, please. Okay, good. So we are ready. Okay, we if you can put your on presentations. Okay, I see the mouse. Okay, yeah, you got it. Okay, okay. So we are going to start in 5, 4. Thank you very much. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night from all over the world. Thank you very much for coming again in a webinar series, The Magic of the PMO. Today we have a very special session. Yes, sorry, I know every week, every time, every session is special, but in this case, it's a little more special. And let me share why. Because this is the first time we have a very good colleague of the profession, a great professional from New Zealand. Okay, and this is wonderful because we are open arms, we are open the doors for everyone around the world, and this is lovely that many people wants to come to share with our global community. So we are going to say thank you very much, Dewey Thorpe. Yeah, that's correct.
Yes, yeah, Guy Thorpe.
That today he's going to talk to us about PMOs, digital learning engines. So currently, nowadays, is when we are talking about digital, it's a very hard concept. So it's very, for me, it's my point of view. That's why I'm going to share it. It's very important that people is living really in experience, real experience in companies, how they are living the PMOs from into a digital environment, no? About everything is involved. So, good. Thank you very much for coming. A very from Barcelona, Spain.
Thank you.
Okay, you are most welcome. And please,
Great. Hey, look, thank you so much
go
for the
ahead.
introduction. That's wonderful. Buenas tardes, buenas noches, and kia ora from New Zealand. It's fantastic to be with you guys and get an opportunity to talk about something that I'm really passionate about, which is PMOs, and then actually about people and upskilling people, particularly through a digital format going forward as well. So hopefully over the next 45 minutes, I can take you on a bit of a journey and take you through that and give you a bit of an understanding about what's influenced me, particularly within this space, and how we can go about upskilling people and using these skills going forward. So just give you a bit of an overview. I'll give you a little bit of background about where I've come from and why I think this is most important. Then I'll give you a little bit of a taster of why PMOs need to build capability. It's not a function that normally comes naturally to PMOs. It's something that most PMOs don't put a lot of focus on, but it's something that I think and believe personally is critical to helping organizations progress and move forward. We also have how we're going to go about doing it. So there's no good in just convincing you on the why we should be doing this, but I'm also going to tell you how you can go about building capability and some of the best ways to go about doing that. And then I'm actually going to give you a case study. It's something that a transformational program that I was personally involved with leading. It's an 8,000 person organization here in New Zealand. And we were managed to use digital learning strategies to help uplift their project management capabilities substantially over a period of time. And we'll round it out with some questions. So I look forward to hearing what you've got to ask me at the end of the session. So it should be fantastic. So look, a little bit about me. I'm Guy Thorpe. I come from Auckland, New Zealand, all the way down on the bottom of the globe. I've got 20 plus years experience within sort of projects and programs and portfolio management. I've worked in PMOs for an extended period of time. But I've also got an education background as well. I started out my career as a school teacher before moving across back into project management. So for me, education and upskilling and giving people learning opportunities is something that runs in my veins. It's something that I'm really passionate about. And you can see it comes through in a lot of the things that I do, particularly the stuff that I do on LinkedIn is all about continuous learning. It's about providing opportunities for people to learn new concepts, but also to help people who probably don't have a natural bent for project management grasp some of those more complicated concepts around project management and PMOs as well. Look, I love all things agile. I love all things human-centered design. Look, I'm agnostic when it comes to the tools. It's all about picking the right tool for the job, for the projects and for PMOs as we move forward as well. I run a consulting business called Value Key here in New Zealand, and we focus on setup, rejuvenation and refreshing of PMOs. And we also do a lot of training and upskilling as well, but also working within the project solution space too. So giving people opportunities to work in projects. So look, enough about me. Let's get into this topic around digital learning. So hopefully by the end of the session, you're going to be inspired to think about capability and how you can approach learning, particularly within your organization in a different way. When I refer to PMOs throughout this presentation, I'm talking about predominantly enterprise PMOs, but this can also be related to functional PMOs within a specific area or a business department. But just bear with me as a general term, because I do understand that there are so many different flavors and different types and different ways of operating PMOs. And so there's probably one no size fits all. There's a generic way of referring to it. So let's talk a little about the project economy. So you hear this term used a lot these days. It's sort of bandied around. But for me, the project economy is a really interesting model. Our traditional model, or the model that I certainly was taught as I was coming up through the ranks in project management, was around the run the business, change the business model. And these were two sides of the same coin effectively. But project management and PMOs predominantly sat on the change the business side rather than run the business side. But what we've seen over the most recent time with the evolution of things like DevOps, cross-functional teams, you've got human-centered design, all these sort of aspects which start to bring both the organization and project management together into one sort of model of operation. So the creation of the project economy is really a confirmation of that movement forward, really. So PMI have quoted that as, this is a paradigm shift. Projects are no longer operate as a sideline to real organizational operations. Instead, projects have become the driving force behind accompanying work, innovation, and expansion. So for me, this really is showing that when project management is no longer an exercise for a small group of people or a small part of the organization, it's actually now how we get work done, how business is operating, and how actually people deliver not only their change activities, but also how they deliver their day-to-day work going forward as well. So for me, that creates a real opportunity for PMOs around the world. What it starts to show is that in a traditional PMO type format or remit, PMOs, their audience or their stakeholders predominantly were made up of the project community. So you had business analysts, you had project managers and program managers and scrum masters or whatever that may be. And then you also had an upward responsibility to senior management. So your audience within say 100-person organization, well, you probably had a smaller group of individuals that a PMO would be working with or focusing on. As we start to move into the project economy, that completely changes. Your audience is now suddenly the entire organization. Everyone in the organization may be involved in some form of project in some way, whether that's on a project team, or supporting by being a subject matter expert, or bringing their expertise and capability to sessions to assist with the project going forward. So suddenly the opportunity for PMO's audience has exploded. It's expanded substantially. We've gone from a smaller group of individuals and peoples to focus on to suddenly an entire organization to look at and support moving forward, which is actually a great opportunity for PMOs rather than a challenge, I think, going forward. A whole bunch more people to work with, a whole lot more people to influence and support, but also a whole bunch of more people to upskill and bring on that journey of bringing up their capability for delivering projects within a business as well. So I want to talk a little bit about the study by McKinsey and company. McKinsey & Co. came out in 2021, earlier this year, with a study they completed at the back end of last year. And what it did, it looked at the 25 top skills that organizations are currently prioritizing around the world. And good news for people like us is that project management actually ranked as the second highest prioritized skill that organizations are looking for at the moment. Interestingly enough, it's the highest mover from 2019. So the biggest shift from 2019 to 2020 was project management, which means that organizations around the world are prioritizing project management as a key capability that they are wanting to acquire and build within an organization. And that's big news for us. It allows us to really see the rise of project management and confirmation of the real skills that brings within an organization as well. So if we think about project management being a key prioritized skill set that businesses are looking for, how are businesses going about filling that skills gap? And what the McKinsey study also showed is that rather than hiring in new people, rather than redeploying their existing workforce or bringing in contractors to fill that skills gap, businesses around the world are focusing on building those skills internally. So what they showed is that 62% of organizations were saying that they were focusing on building project management skills internally within their organization. This is a big outcome. It shows that organizations are really putting a focus on getting delivery happening and actually focusing on their people, and then also focusing on building those skills with the people that they have within their organization as well. So why would organizations focus on building project management capability now? We've been, obviously as a profession, we've been in the space for quite some time. Why would we want to focus on that? Well, one of the things that when I looked at the PMI survey that they put out in 2020, the pulse of the profession, one of the statistics that really struck for me was around project failure rates. And so if you start to look at project failure rates, high maturity organizations typically have about 11% of their failures. Low maturity organizations typically have 21% of project failures. What that shows is that low maturity organizations have twice as many failures as high organizations. When you break that out a little bit further and you start to look at what that is within budget, on time, and meeting goals, low maturity organizations, 46% on budget, 39% on time, and 56% of projects actually met their intended goals. Higher maturity organizations, 67%, 63% on time, and 77% met their goals. So what this shows is it's not surprising. Higher maturity organizations, more capable individuals, more mature processes obviously have a much higher success rate when it comes to delivery of their projects within budget, on time, and meeting their overall goals. So the key question we start to ask ourselves then is, how do we get to be mature, and how do we improve and advance on our existing maturity? So one of the things that also pop out as part of the that study by PMI was showing that high maturity organizations invest in training and capability. So you can see here champion organizations, as they're referred to by PMI, or high maturity organizations. 83% of those organizations have an ongoing training program in place to raise the capability of their staff. Versus lower maturity organizations, only 34% of those organizations have training underway. So it really shows the stark difference between those organizations that see project management skills as an important priority and prioritize the training and upskilling of people versus lower maturity organizations that don't invest in that training and move that forward as well. So one of the other things I wanted to start to talk about is PMOs and their involvement within capability and training as well. So Wellington is a consultancy firm in the UK and in Europe, and they have their study as well, which they put out annually. And going through that, one of the things that they've highlighted, what are the largest project management challenges in your organization? What they found was poorly trained project managers ranked top of the list for their challenges within an organization, which is surprising. I can see there'd be lots of challenges for organizations, but interestingly enough, when you conversely look at part of that study as well, it says what activities are undertaken by PMOs. They looked at the 17 or 18 different top activities that PMOs are involved with, and actually training project professionals was one of the last that a PMO actually looks at. Right at the top of the things that people were working on within PMOs was project status reporting. Now, for me, that feels like a bit of a travesty, to be honest with you. We've got project status reporting as being one of the most important activities above training and giving capability and mentoring project professionals to become more skilled and capable in that space. So what I see here is a massive disparity between actually what the challenge is, which is around training, coaching, mentoring, raising capability of people to deliver projects within an organization. But PMOs are not focusing on that at the moment. They're focusing on status reporting and maintaining project lists, which seems a strange place to be. And I personally think that actually that list almost needs to be flipped around the other way, and we should really be putting training and upskilling at the top of the list for activities that PMOs should be looking at. So a quick summary of the why. So hopefully you're starting to get a feel of where I'm going with this, is that the project economy really has changed actually the audience and the stakeholders that PMOs are looking at or engaging with. We've gone from looking at a smaller project community or a subsection of a business and working with management to suddenly have an explosion and looking at an entire organization as potential stakeholders and individuals that will be delivering and involved in projects going forward. You can also see that now organizations are prioritizing project management. Suddenly it's the number 2 skill globally within organizations that they're looking for, above a whole bunch of other things that you typically would have thought would be right up there. But actually project management's right at the top as far as a prioritized capability and skill. And you also saw that actually organizations are turning to building that capability within. So rather than buying in the capability through contractors or rehiring individuals, they're actually working with the people that they have within their organization and they're building their skill set. So the big question then is that what's the role of the PMO? And as you can see within that existing study from Wellington is that at the moment, PMOs are currently not focusing on building capability or mentoring or coaching. They're actually focusing on other things like project status reporting. I understand that's normally a typical function of a PMO, but I personally believe that we would gain so much by flipping that over and actually focusing on how we can raise capability of people to deliver projects with an organization. So that's the why. So hopefully you're on board with me so far. You're starting to get a sense of where we're going with this and a need to put capability at the top of the ladder when it comes to things that we should be focusing on. So you might be asking, so how do we go about doing that? What's the way that we should be doing that to help build capability? It probably is also no surprise that we all learn in different ways. So actually there's a model called VAK, which is VAK. So as humans, when we learn through visual, audio, and calisthenic type measures. We all have a natural preference of the way that we learn. Some of us learn better when we learn visually, which was when you learn through things like pictures or models or images or videos or those sorts of things. 30% of people globally actually are auditory, so they actually learn better through hearing things. So think of things like podcasts and those sorts of things. And 5% of people are actually calisthenic. So what they do is they actually learn through physically doing. So by touching, by shaping, by using, by doing physical activity is actually the way that they learn. And that's a really interesting model, because what it does is it shows us is that people learn in different ways, and they have a natural tendency to lean towards one of those particular learning types. We all learn through a mix of all three of those, but we actually have a natural preference for that. And what it does show is actually that 65% of the population are actually more visual. So they actually learn through pictures and images and videos and those sorts of things. That's their natural learning style. So if we go back to our friends at McKinsey and we look at their study again, as part of that study, they started to look at what are the formats that people learn or are learning the most through, or how are they building those skills and those capabilities. So what it showed us was actually 75% of respondents said that digital learning was their preferred learning format. And that's really surprising as well, because if you think about in-person or in-person workshops, actually digital learning came out above those as well, above doing things like coaching, above doing things like field work or organizational diagnostics. Digital learning was the predominant way that individuals preferred to learn take on board knowledge or acquire knowledge. And this is really prevalent too, I think, within a COVID period as well. People are doing more learning at home. People are doing self-paced learning online. People are doing learning modules. But actually the flexibility that comes from having a digital learning capability rather than physical classrooms or having to sit next to someone, the ease of being able to learn in that way has come out on top. And so what McKinsey was saying is digital learning is by far and away the predominant preferred way that people are taking on knowledge these days. Well, why might that be? That really got me thinking when I was looking at this around, so what are the advantages of digital learning? What are the things that we pick up most when we start to think about digital learning? Well, the benefits of digital learning. So if we think about it, e-learning or digital learning, your retention rates, which is about how you hold on to that knowledge. How does that knowledge stay within your mind, your short-term memory or longer-term memory? Actually, e-learning, digital learning, 25 to 60% more knowledge is retained through digital learning compared to face-to-face learning. And that was a study done by the Research Institute of America. So actually, by having digital learning opportunities, we retain up to 60% more knowledge through that channel compared to a face-to-face or classroom-based type training activity. That's huge. That means that potentially you could learn up to twice as much as you could through a digital learning platform or digital learning opportunity than you could if you actually just sat in a classroom and heard somebody talk. When you start to think about how long does it take people to learn information as well. So this was a study done by Brown and Hall. And what it showed is that e-learning reduces the learning time as well, between up to 40 and 60%. So that's huge. What that's showing us is that actually you can learn the information, onboard the information nearly twice as fast as well compared to classroom-based training. So that's significant. So not only are you retaining and taking on board the knowledge, more of it through an e-learning channel, but you're actually being able to do it in a quicker time as you move forward as well. So some big advantages there. And finally, e-learning increases the amount of material you can take on board as well. So a study by IBM, who went through a process of doing some digital learning and created a digital learning strategy, what they showed is that actually their staff was able to take on board 5 times as much as material as they could when they were doing normal classroom-based training, which is significant if you think about the amount of information that you can get across. So 3 key things that really stand out when it comes to digital learning or relearning opportunities is one, you can withhold the information, more information through that channel. You can do it in a quicker time. So it's much faster, your ability to process that information and you get through it. And then that leads into, you can actually get through nearly up to 5 times as much material through an online channel than you could if you were going through potentially face-to-face type channels as well. So some real advantages that are actually coming through by using a digital channel or medium or e-learning strategy to actually help you acquire knowledge and learn knowledge as you go. So let's talk a little bit about a case study. So this all sounds really good, Guy. You're telling me some fantastic stuff. I can see suddenly the audience for PMOs has changed. I can also see that we're in a space where digital learning has a real opportunity. But show me how it's real. Show me how you can actually do this. Well, here's a case study that I did, or actually a program of work I did with an organization in New Zealand. So this is Waitemata District Health Board. This is a hospital in Auckland, New Zealand. It's the fastest growing hospital in New Zealand as well. It has about 8,000 staff and services the community in the North Shore where I live with about 600,000 people. It currently spends about $1.7 billion a year on operating costs. Coincidentally, it's the hospital that both my kids were born in, and it's a hospital that's right down the road from where I live as well. So it's an organisation that I'm really passionate about. It's a big part of our community, and it services the healthcare needs for a large population within our area. So for me, when the opportunity came around for me to be involved with helping them improve their project management, program management, portfolio management capabilities and build that up, I jumped at the opportunity to get in there and work with them. One of the things that they did early on within the process is they had a P3, M3 scoring. So that's project, program, and portfolio management maturity score. This is a tool that's developed by Axelos, and it's a tool that looks across those 3 different models of projects, programs, and portfolios, and looks at the 7 different perspectives underneath it of stakeholder management, financial management, resource management, so forth. And then what it does, it brings you out a score on your level of maturity within that. It's a really tough model to score well in, and it's a model that's used globally by hundreds of thousands of organizations to benchmark their maturity. Interestingly enough, when Waitemata did their scoring in 2018, they came out as a 1.45. That 1.45 is an okay score, but really showed that the lack of maturity within an organization as well. So if you think about that Axelos model, it has those 5 levels of awareness, a repeatable process, defined process, managed process, and optimized. And so you work through those levels, trying to work towards, obviously, a higher level of creation. Interesting enough, though, globally, 80% of organizations are below a level 2. This is because it's a really tough model. You actually only end up with your score related to the weakest link you have within that model. So you may be very strong on financial management, but if you're not so great on benefits management, your score ends up being related to the benefits management score. But what it shows is that organizations still have a long way to go with building project management maturity across the board. And PMOs have a pivotal role in helping improve that. But what I wanted to do is showing with that is actually where Waitemata District Health Board sat on that. They actually sat down as a 1.45, so down the bottom here, and had a long way to go with regards to moving themselves up that model. Incidentally, there's only a few organisations up that top end. So I think Transport for London's around about a 4. We've got some organisations that are up the top end of that Axelos scale, but it takes a while for organisations to move through that process as well. But I wanted to show you that as a benchmark, really, to show you where Waitemata was. So they're at a 1.45, lower level maturity moving forward. So healthcare spending in New Zealand, this was part of the problem. So let's set the context for the organisation and where they're at. Healthcare spending in New Zealand had been increasing year on year, and they've been spending billions of dollars in trying to get their healthcare system organised and DHBs and hospitals running efficiently. I think what was happening though was that actually the money that they were spending still wasn't enough. There was a deficit annually that was coming through. So around $423 million each year was the shortfall between how much was being funded to the healthcare organizations and hospitals and actually what they were overspending. There was a lot of noise in the media. There was a lot of stories that were coming out continuously about hospitals and the way that they were run. And unfortunately in New Zealand, every week there was a new story about how things were being run inefficiently or projects that had gone off track or poor selection of projects within portfolios. You can kind of see here some headlines that came up with, I think poor old Middlemore Hospital spent $8 million on a learning hub when actually they needed to reclare a building. They'd spent some money on some buildings when actually there was sewage leaking out through walls and those sorts of things as well. So the way the DHBs were being run and the way the hospitals were being run was deemed to be ineffective, and they were struggling to show that they're actually adding the critical spending and control over those portfolios. So with that as the backdrop, the CEO of Waitemata Hospital approached me and asked me to work with them around building their project, program and portfolio management capability. There was no PMO in existence. There was no current register of all of the projects that they actually had going on within the organization as well. So when we looked at the organization, you've got a wide group of people. Obviously, a hospital is a medical facility, and is full of doctors and nurses and anaestheticians and so forth. So we had, if you look at the makeup of that organization, 5,000 odd people were medical staff. 2,500 people who were service individuals providing food and catering and laundry and those sorts of things to patient. There was a head office, so a corporate function of about 80 people. And there was a really small project management community of people as well. So about 90 people actually delivering projects. But one of the things that the CEO made clear was that actually we don't just want to focus on that small 90 group of people. That's important. We actually want the organization in total to think about how they run projects. So those capital projects that are spending capital expenditure are important, but also all the OPEX projects as well. So everything within the hospital, continuous improvement projects, projects to work on levels of service, all these sorts of things were actually suddenly in scope for an opportunity to improve and develop the way that we move forward. When we looked at the existing approach that the organisation had taken to training, they were doing some classroom-based training with individuals around the organisation, trying to get people on board to think about projects in a different way and to take on project management capabilities. But what we found is that the classroom-based training actually had only a 43% attendance. So over half the people were not turning up for this particular training. Which was really difficult, particularly when you paid for the training course and created logistics. And as an organisation, we looked into that a little bit deeper. And what it showed us was that a lot of people within the hospital are obviously on shift work. So they're unable to get out of shifts and those sorts of things. But they're also time poor as well. So it's very difficult for them to take 2-3 hours out of their day and suddenly come across and do project management training, particularly when they're focused on patients. They're there to work with patients and provide care. So coming across and doing project management training wasn't top of the list for them going forward. We also found that when we were using classroom-based comms, so we were emailing people, sending emails out to them, actually only 23% of people actually even opened those emails, which is a really poor open rate. So, you've got a good chunk of the people that we're sending this communications to not ever opening it or not ever seeing the information that we're sending through as well. So what it showed us was that this model of training and upskilling was ineffective. It wasn't working for the organization and wasn't meeting those medical individuals where they needed to be. And for me, that really dawned on me when I was talking to the Chief Medical Officer, Andrew Brandt. And one of the things that he said to me was, look, I took a Hippocratic oath not a project exam. And that really struck home for me. And what that showed was that actually he's a medical individual. He's in this role for altruistic reasons. He cares about patients. He cares about looking after people. And he's not so focused on running projects. And what it showed was, for me, was a really a dawning moment of we're approaching this in the wrong way. Rather than trying to tell people that they should run projects just for being the sake of running a project well, we actually needed to attach that to something that was important within the culture of the organization. So what we came up with is we attached a learning and development program onto a new approach. So what we started to talk about was better projects equal better patient outcomes. And that really resonated with people around the hospital, because what it meant was if we run these projects well, we're actually going to be able to improve the patient care that we're giving to people within the organization, which is exactly what medical individuals are about. So being able to run a project to install a new radiology machine, if that radiology machine is installed really well, the staff are trained up on the new functionality and new capability, and then that means that our patients are getting better patient outcomes. That's a win for an individual. So all of a sudden, when we started to change the story around why we wanted to improve project management, we suddenly had a whole bunch more people interested in actually what we were doing as well. One of the other things that we changed up was, rather than continuing with the classroom-based training, we switched to a digital learning strategy. We started to look at ways that we could meet staff where they're at. Means that we could push information to their mobile phones. It meant that we could give them opportunities to do self-paced learning on their laptops in the evening. We provided, a range of different options that people could do at a time that was convenient for them. So what we focused on is we built a knowledge hub that was accessible to everyone within the organization as a web page. It had rich information, it had lots of resources, it had video content. So anyone who's involved with a project for the first time, potentially, could come to the site and glean a whole bunch of information that was rich in content, variety of different mediums, so video, text-based, a whole bunch of different ways for them to get that information across. We focused on short video content, so short, less than 2 minutes video snippets, giving people an opportunity to learn something new about project or program management, or the role of the PMO within the organization. And we created those as an opportunity, and we pushed them out to their laptops, to their mobiles, but then also we put that within the website as well for people to come to as essential knowledge. And what we found was, by doing that, we got so much more engagement. People were clicking on those videos. We made them interesting. We made them funny. And we made them informative. And then all of a sudden, people were interested in absorbing that content. We provided virtual coaching. So we were able to connect people one-to-one and provide coaching, so they didn't actually have to leave the hospital. They could sit within an area, suddenly have a virtual coaching session on a particular project that they were running. We provided virtual classrooms, so we brought people together through Zoom meetings to teach them on new topics, created a project community virtually that enabled people to join in rather than, again, having to leave their shift and come through that space. So what we did is we gave people choice. We gave them options, and we tried to give them accessibility and availability whenever, where they were, wherever they were. So rather than forcing them down to the traditional classroom-based training or bringing an external trainer, we really gave people the opportunities to learn and take on this knowledge themselves. And if you think back to earlier in the presentation around the way people learn information, suddenly this sparked up and people were taking this on board. It was really the style of information and learning approach that they were looking for. You're probably starting to think, okay, so what did that look like? Well, what we did is we created a bunch of videos. So part of that process, I taught myself to animate. So we used a tool, and we created a whole bunch of short click videos that were through animation. So they were interesting and different and amusing and funny. And they gave people the opportunity to click on that and take on board some stuff. Also, by using animation, it's unthreatening. So if you're a nurse who's running a project for the very first time and going through that process, actually, you want something that's going to be unthreatening and is easy for you to absorb. So we found animation is a real easy way for people to pick that up and take on board that knowledge as well. You can see some virtual coaching taking place there, and you can also see a quick snapshot of our knowledge hub there as well, that we created for people to connect with and come to as a central place for learning. So you're starting to probably say, well, gosh, all of that stuff with digital strategy, digital creation probably sounds really expensive to create. You must have had a huge budget to do it. Well, actually, we have a very, very small budget. What you can see here is myself and the head of capital planning and operations, Chris Watson. We had an iPad, we borrowed a couple of lights, and we started creating videos, and we did the editing ourselves. So we actually pretty much did this for zero cost. We must have created 20 or 30 different videos. Teaching myself to animate was another opportunity as well, so it cost very little, but actually provided a whole bunch of video resources for people to absorb around the hospital for pretty much zero cost. So we didn't bring in an expensive digital agency, or we didn't bring in an expensive film crew. We did this ourselves for pretty much no money invested within it as well, other than our own personal time and energy in creating those things as well. So cost shouldn't be a barrier to creating these types of things, and shouldn't be a barrier to building capability. So this all sounds great. Tell me, what was the end result? Well, actually what we found was that our virtual classroom-based training stats went up. So suddenly we had 95% of people who agreed to attend the course suddenly clicking in and joining a virtual classroom. What we were doing is we were getting an 82% click-through rate. So people were watching those videos that we were creating. We'd gone from a very small 23% of people actually being interested to suddenly 82% of people clicking on videos, opening them up and absorbing that content. And that was huge. It had a big impact overall. So when we looked at what was the end result, so over an 18-month period, we actually moved Waitamatta's P through M3 score from a 1.4 all the way up to a 3. So suddenly we had shifted the organization substantially as far as their maturity scoring. We also were nominated as PMO of the Year in 2019 as well. So the PMO that we'd set up, the work that we'd done in this space was being recognized by PMI. And actually also what we showed is the investment, the money that we'd put into building this capability, the ROI, the return on investment, was paid off within 6 months of the project, of this stuff going live. We were able to ensure that there was less cost overruns. We were able to ensure that there was cost avoidance. We also were able to select the projects that the organization needed and stop those that the organization had deemed no longer effective. And that cost and that return now seems minimal compared to the value that continues to be generated going forward as well. So look, hopefully over those last 45 minutes, I've managed to take you on that journey of digital learning and the way that it can influence an organization. Our audience as a PMO is now so much bigger, and the opportunity in that space is huge. PMOs, I think, personally need to prioritize learning, coaching, and particularly through a digital strategy, enabling people to learn new project management capabilities. PMOs have the opportunity to be a leader within that space. PMOs have an opportunity to grasp this and help the people around them within the organization acquire these new skills. And that can only be good for the organization as a whole, and can only be good for PMOs and the project management profession as a whole going forward. So look, thank you very much. Happy to take questions.
Wonderful session, guy. Very fast, but with so many information at the same time. Very interesting. The data is very interesting. I was watching, visualizing at the same time when you are saying it's very important for all our audience that currently is given any kind of training workshops or training about PMO services related or certifications, whatever, project management as well, obviously, or any other kind of certification or training courses, no, for companies that it's not very expensive to prepare something like this. This is very,
Yeah.
it's paying me attention.
Yeah, it's actually it's a really cheap way to do it, and I think um, I think that accreditation courses and training institutions still have a part to play. I think obtaining those accreditations is still important as part of your professional development journey. But I think when you think about the project economy and the wider organization, not everybody within an organization needs to acquire a PMI accreditation, or not everybody in an organization needs to acquire Prince 2. Some people just need a basic project knowledge or an understanding of how projects operate, or some basic tools. So I think PMOs can facilitate that by giving them some basic information and helping lift up that sort of that lower level capability as you go forward. And as I showed, you can do it for very little. Very little investment, very little cost. It just requires having a plan, having a strategy about how you want to do it, and then using those sort of simple digital tools that you need to do it. And you don't need flashy camera rigs or lighting kits or anything like that. You can literally do it with what's in your pocket, an iPhone or an Android phone. Doing filming like that, and then doing some simple online video editing is enough to be able to create a really valuable resource that can help people learn about project management.
Yeah, it's most probably is a matter of time, no? Because to prepare is not expensive, but we need to take on count enough time to prepare again and again, no? Because the first time, that like the movie, no,
Yep.
you need to practice and practice and practice until you have the right scene, no, the right took, not yeah, the right took.
Yeah, but I think it doesn't have to be a Martin Scorsese film. It doesn't have to be so polished and professional. I think sometimes people appreciate it actually being a little authentic, maybe a little bit bumpy and a little bit raw, but they're showing that actually there's a person at the end of that trying to impart some knowledge is actually a good thing. And I think sometimes we stop ourselves from doing those videos or that training material because we think it has to be just perfect. But actually, sometimes being good is just enough to be able to get it going.
Yeah, less is more, no?
Yeah. Yeah. And look, 90 seconds in front of a camera is not so long. You only really want to
No.
impart a small bit of information, in 90 seconds. So a 90-second video is probably about as long as the attention span that you can grab somebody initially. So just talking about one topic and getting that across is a start point.
Yeah, because I was watching. I will remember. And nowadays, with my professional services as PMO consultant, project management consultant, that many companies they don't have enough time to offer a training for his employees or for the people. No, they don't have too much time. Everybody is, as we said, no, with automatic button of survival. Yeah, so for surviving is automatic button. So everybody's running, only watching, living the day of the day, but they are not thinking to improve his not only his skills, hard skills or soft skills, no, the knowledge. As you could, as I'm absolutely agree. Now the project economy, we can to get everyone anywhere, any place, anytime. Because if you are recording a video, you can watch anytime, any place when you have enough time, no, or you feel comfortable, or after your work day, most probably you feel more relaxed to keep training. But it's very, very difficult to companies to offer like this because I think, in my point of view, the interaction between people, no, the attendants and the instructor, no, teacher, instructor, no, the professional who is sharing the knowledge in this, for me, it doesn't matter. It's live online, no, as we are talking right now, but it's very important to have this perception of people, no, watching, listening in real time, as you put on a slide when you have many resources at the same time. I really like that because yes, we are sharing, but you can put videos, very short videos. You have a hub, no, to share contents, no,
Yeah.
for now in the future. Very interesting. I really like it. Very,
Yeah,
very
and I
good.
think you touch on a point there around, organizations are so busy, they're scrabbling, they're running, people are busy all the time. Um, I think that's true. They really are. But it's one of those things is that are you too busy to be upskilling your staff to deliver better projects? So it's one of those things, if you don't invest in your people, you'll then continue to have increased failure rates. Whereas actually, if you invest some time in improving your capability, you'll have less of that. So you'll be less scrabbling. So it's kind of one of those things that building capability, building skills, those sorts of things is important because it'll ultimately help the overall outcome of your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe when I'm watching and talking with so many companies at the different, no, private and public, and very different levels of professionals, some seniors and younger, with ladies and girls, but uh, almost all of them are agree in one thing: our companies don't invest in us for our training. It doesn't matter, project management, whatever. They don't. I don't know. It's a matter of time. Yeah, most of them. But another, they have money to invest and they have money to pay the training courses, but
Of
they
course.
don't do it.
Yep.
Mm,
It seems strange to me, to be honest with you, because I think you if you want results and you want outcomes, and I think I showed in the presentation that higher maturity organizations have half as many project failures. So even if you invested a very small portion of the money that you would save on cost overruns or these sorts of things, even if you invested only 10% of that back into the capability build, you'd end up with a huge training budget that could be building capability, adding to staff retention, building a great culture. But it's that ability, the leap of faith to say, okay, we need to take that investment and we need to invest in people to make this happen. And we're going to commit to seeing those outcomes come out the other end.
yeah, it's continuous improvement, and we are not talking only about quality and about process. No, we are talking about ourselves in management. We need to keep improving every day. And one reflection from PM officer is technology from for 20th century one projects. No, all this kind of new technology related from any technology. We need management of 21st century because if the technology is growing, no, is some every day we are discovering a new technologies, a lot of different several, but management who need manage these new projects with these new technologies is a very far away about the continuous improvement, no, in management because that, I think this is a every day is a very huge gap between them, and this is a problem because companies are wasting and losing money about this.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, the hardest part is actually getting started with this, digital learning approach. I think uh, just setting yourself a small goal, even if it's just like one thing, right? Right, as a PMO team, uh, we're going to pick one topic. That might be we're going to do risk management. All right. And we're going to do one 90-second video on risk management, and we're going to put it out there, and we're going to see the response that we get. So it's a very small experiment. It's just 90 seconds of someone's time. We'll set it up, we'll do it, and we'll record that topic. And I just did one recently with the team that I'm working with. We did risk statements. So how to write a really good risk statement. And one of the PMO team put their hand up and they did this. It's not something that they're comfortable with normally, but they did this 90-second video. And then we put it out to the organization and they loved it. And the response we got back was, can we have more of this? And so it was a really small thing. You didn't have to come up with a huge digital strategy to start with. You just had to start out with a very small experiment of let's try doing some capability and learning in a different way and see what we get back and see whether there's any uptake. So if you do that and you send it out and then no one watches it or no one sees it, okay, so maybe that's not working. But if you get it out there and suddenly you get a whole bunch of interest in it, maybe we could do that again. And then maybe we could do a different topic and then we could do it again. But it's just a small experiment into the digital learning space might get you started.
Absolutely. Before to start with questions, if anybody
Sure.
have any question, please remember all our community, all our attendants, all our audience. Remember, we have a PMOs global community. We are sharing free resources among this video we are recording is going to be recorded. Us, everyone can watch and again and enjoy it anytime, any place, any place, no, anytime, anywhere, any place. Yeah, and this presentation is going to be shared as well because guy is giving us, and we are going to share by free, obviously. And if anybody wants to for the next training shop in Spanish and in English as well, this is our PMO Academy. So feel free to share any comments. I have my one question, Guy. Sorry. You put, yeah, the first one. Where can we follow to you? Where can connect to you in social media?
Please come and connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm there a lot. I like to post there a lot, and also like to engage with people on LinkedIn as well. So please look for me, Guy Thorpe, on LinkedIn, and connect with me after this. I, really welcome to see some people connecting with me off the back of this, and see where we go. But also my email there, so guythorpe@valuekey.co.nz, or check out the website www.valuekey.co.nz as well. So come through there. And and ask me any questions if you've got anything off the back of this or something that you're interested in. Please, I'm available to have that conversation with you.
Okay, I have one question. For all our audience, I put the website, no, the link of this website. When you mentioned it, that P3 M3, if I do remember correctly, do you have
right.
a 1.45 percentage, no, of maturity points? No, that's correct. Which is the higher level of this percentage or table? I don't know.
Yeah, so the way the P3 M3 model works is that there are 5 levels. So one is awareness of process, 2 being a repeatable process, 3 being a defined process, 4 being managed, and 5 being optimized. And what it does is it looks at project management, program management, and portfolio management as individuals. But then it looks underneath each of those modules, things like risk management, your benefits management, your financial management, and shows you how mature you are in each of those perspectives. And so the score that they got, 1.45, was for the total, for how they were performing in project, program, and portfolio management across all of those things. So it was tough because they were good at some things. So they had some good practices, but they actually had some really immature practices as well. So because the way the model works, you're only as good as your weakest link. Their score was quite low because they were not so great in things like resource management, for example.
Which is the highest score?
Yeah, so 5 being optimized is the highest. So as you move through those levels, your ability, your process, your capability, all improve up that maturity curve. So if you're at a level 5, which I think there's very few organizations globally that are at that level. I think most organizations sit below sort of the level 2. Those that have a PMO actually fare better because they generally have processes, controls, and centralize those sorts of things. Whereas a lot of organizations, there really isn't actually even a repeatable way of doing it. They might have a project, a framework or a project approach, but not everybody follows it. A small portion of people follow it, but the rest of the organization doesn't. So that means that you don't quite get up the scoring levels. So a repeatable process means that you have the majority of people following that framework and operating within that way.
Yeah, most of companies, in my point of view, only they get at the level 3 because it's very complicated that the mayor of the company followed all the standards, all the rules, all the best practices. It's very complicated, really. In practice,
Yeah.
it's very complicated. In theory and on training courses, it sounds wonderful, but in practice, many times it's a nightmare because everybody needs somebody, everybody needs something, everybody needs one thing special for them, and to put all together in one formula in a basket, and give him the benefit expectations, no? To talk appropriately. Well, it's very complicated at the same time because when you are running a portfolio program at the same time, projects and products is a different velocity, okay? And the stakeholders, they only expecting the best for them, no? It's very complicated not to manage the. That's why I always talking about the soft skills, no? Because you are like a referee, no, in a ring, because
Good way to
everybody are
describe it.
fighting, no? And then no, hold on. Something like this is complicated, but it's very wonderful at the same time for people like us that this is our profession and we are trying to do the best as consultants, or most probably in practice now, because you are going to do the example, to put example, no, or be the example for the rest of the people that they don't have enough training about project management, PMO, or whatever related, and it needs for these huge companies, or maybe not huge, smaller, but everybody needs training courses, or
Yeah.
a new knowledge, for
Yeah, totally.
improvement his profession.
Mm.
Any other question from our audience? Yeah, it was very, everything was very clear, really.
Well, good. I'm pleased you
You,
liked it. And look, I mean, what you're doing here with your, your PMO offices is actually digital learning. If you think about it, what you're doing is you're providing a medium for people to learn through, logging in, taking on board this. So actually, what you're doing is you're promoting digital learning for a community of people as well. So thank you for doing that.
we are trying to do our best. We need, I identified 3 years ago that in Spain and in the Spanish community, nobody do something like this. And this is, we love our profession. And with all the team, with us in PM offices. We are a team in several phases and several levels, like Veronica, no? Veronica, you have been in touch with her. Currently is with us. And other guys and ladies is helping us to do that. Is very complicated because the most of the things that we are doing is by free for the community, but for us, in this time, for you, for example, your time is very valuable. And thank you very much, Guy, for coming to share
My
with
pleasure.
us, because we know that this a very nice effort. It's very early. No, now it's 7 a.m. No, that's correct.
It's morning time now, yet the family are getting up and getting moving. So yeah, it's been good though. So thank you for that.
No, you are most welcome. We are going to say thank you very much for coming. Nobody have any question? Yeah, it was very clear. A very nice presentation, by the way. So
Thank you.
it's most probably. So we are going to sharing good for the rest of the people, and we are going to continue in social media because it's very important. The most of people take this kind of knowledge. I enjoy it very much, your
Good.
presentation today, really.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Hoping to see you next time in other initiatives we have in PM officers. And thank you very much for all our members. Thank you very much for our audience that currently is watching this session. And remember, we are going to record it. Now it's recorded. We're going to share the video and the presentation for all our members. Good. From
From New Zealand.
greetings from Barcelona, España. Hoping to see you very soon. We know that you are already have been here in the past, but most probably in the future. Hoping you coming again, and in the near future, if try, I can go your lovely country. Well, will be great to see you in person.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tim. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye. See you next time. Thank you very much.